Hello, everybody. My name is Alan Singer. I'm a professor of social studies education at Hofstra University, and this is in Long Island in New York State. My students in my social studies methods class have to take a New York State certification exam, social studies, and we're going to be doing a review for that exam today, and we're filming it hopefully to help other people. I call this review Alan's Surefire Stress Reduction Tips, because one key to doing well on an exam like the social studies content specialty test is to relax. Too often people get all tense about the exam and then they don't do their best. So a big key is just to relax. So you want to avoid stress, you want to get there in time. I also recommend don't study the night before. You're taking a test at 9 o'clock, you stop studying at 5. You study all night, you cram, you're just going to make yourself nuts. Plan a relaxing evening at home, spend it with a friend, download a movie, something that's not too serious, go to bed early, get up, have a light breakfast, go take your test. The other big stress reduction thing I recommend is during the test, if you're having a string of difficult questions, take a break, go for a walk. Now, I know you can't raise your hand and say, look, I need to go for a walk. Go to the restroom and rest. Go to the restroom, slop water on your face, get yourself relaxed, go back, and then slam the test. You want to do your best, but you gotta be careful, don't get too crazy. Now, for the social studies 7 to 12 certification, you have to register for what they call CST 115. That's the new test. The new test is actually easier than the old test. The old test is still called the backup. You want to take the new one, and the reason is, in the original social studies CST, the essay was worth 10%. On the new social studies CST, the essay is worth 20%. And that 10% difference has got a lot of people over the cusp to pass. Now, about 15% of the questions are in US history, about 15% are in global history, and then 12, 12, and 12 on citizenship, economics, geography, and another 15% on literacy skills. I have to tell you, I found that the geography and the economics questions often are very technical. And what my recommendation on that is, if you don't know it, don't sweat it, just skip it, go back and guess at the end. You only need to get a 60 to pass this test. If you get right the questions you know and do well on the essay, you will pass. If you get stuck on an economics vocabulary word that you never heard of, then you're in trouble. Again, you only need to get a 60 to pass. My recommendation on the multiple choice questions is this. Most of them start with a prompt. What you want to do is read the prompt, read the question, but don't look at the choices. If you can, use your little white screen, cover the choices. Read the prompt, look at the question, and then ask yourself, what is the answer to the question? Go back and look in the prompt for help with the answer. Once you've figured out what you think is a reasonable answer, then go look at the choices and pick the choice that you think best matches what you know. If you can't figure it out, skip it. I don't care if you skip 5 in a row. You want to get to the end, because the last question is worth the same number of points as the first. You want to make sure you find your questions. For everybody, your question is going to be different, because each of you took different undergraduate history classes, and each of you had different professors. So different professors, different classes, you'll learn different things. We don't all know the same thing. You have to find your questions and get your questions right. Don't worry about the others. You'll fill them in at the end. A typical question, they give you a reading passage. And the reading passage is from a letter written by James Madison in 1787. Now, James Madison, 1787, are immediately two clues. James Madison is one of the founders of the nation. He's at the Constitutional Convention. He's also one of the authors of the Federalist Papers. 1787 tells us this letter is written after the Revolution, but before the creation of the new government. Immediately, we have textual clues. I then read the passage, and the passage tells us about the kind of government he would like to see. Now, I'm ready to look at the question. The question is, the problem described by Madison in the letter above is most directly addressed by which congressional power listed in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution? I'm now going to go back and I'm going to look at the passage again, because I now know I'm looking for a congressional power that's going to be addressed in the United States Constitution. Then I look at the choices. Now, based on the passage, I know this is about the ability to collect taxes. Well, now I'm going to look at the choices, and choice A is about the ability to collect taxes. I'm going to check the others just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure choice A is the answer here. But again, the procedure is I looked at the prompt, I saw what were the clues, I looked at the question, I answered the question in my head, went back and checked it in the prompt, and then I looked for the matching. The matching is the last piece. This test is set up so that the material most of the time is in the prompt, but if you just match words, you're likely to be wrong. You need to include the key component, which is thinking. Second sample question they give us is on global history. Here, there's no prompt, just a question. A historian studying the global financial crisis of 2000-2008 would best begin to analyze the relative impacts of the crisis on the economies of Africa and of Western Europe by comparing. So we're looking at the financial crisis of a relatively recent time period, 2000-2008, and we're going to be comparing its impact on Africa and its impact on Western Europe. However, this is very important. We're going to be looking at what will help us to analyze the relative impact. So now I'm thinking, what kind of material will help us to analyze the relative impact of the crisis? Well, its impact on business maybe, its impact on people, its impact on demographics. I'm leaning towards, I want to see what the impact of this crisis was on people in Africa and people in Western Europe. So now I'm going to look at the choices. And it turns out one of the choices is on the distribution of wealth in the countries, but that doesn't seem like that's going to address this global crisis. The relative importance of construction, I don't see how that's important. The measure of corruption, that's not what this question is about. The extent to which the economies of the two regions are integrated into international markets. Stop me. It's a global crisis. If you're not integrated into the global markets, you're not going to be affected that much. If you are into global markets, you will be. The integration into global markets seems to me that's the better choice here. But again, the key was analyzing what the information they provided in that question. Now, The third sample question they give on the test threw me, because it was one of these geography questions where you had to know the vocabulary. So they say, a high school social studies teacher is planning a lesson on contemporary population distribution trends for an advanced geography class. The teacher could best use the demographic transition model. I don't know what the demographic transition model is, because when I took geography, I didn't take that class. I took a different geography class. They didn't teach the demographic. So immediately I'm saying this is not one I'm really going to spend time on. But I do know the lesson is on population distribution trends. So the answer is going to be about population distribution trends. So I look at the choices. Choice D is the likely effect of industrial growth on birth and death rates in developing countries. Well, that would be population distribution trends. I'm going to have to guess. I'm going to guess that one. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I may even on my whiteboard mark down 3, B and D, and go back and guess at the end. But that's one I'm going to have to guess at, because I don't know the exact meaning of that model. But that's okay, because if I got the first and second questions right, I'm already ahead of the game. I don't have to get them all right. The third question is a graph. It's my technical economics question on aggregate demand curve. That's the kind of question that drives everybody nuts, because there are like numbers and letters here. But it's really a question about the impact of demand on price. If I look at the graph, has 3 components. The price, output, which is a synonym for supply, and then its impact on demand. So if I look at the graph and puzzle it out, that gives me the clues to the answer. If I just get stuck on a vocabulary, I'm stuck. But if I look at the graph before I look at the choices, at least I got a chance at this question. 5 is another prompt to read. This is on Korematsu, so it's not that hard, because I have a prompt that's written in words. And then 6, again, is one of those extended questions where I got to piece it out. 6 is a social science researcher is beginning a study of the Pacific Rim. Researcher, Pacific Rim, economies during the first part of the 21st century. A major focus will be impact of Chinese economic growth on other Pacific Rim nations, particularly in Asia. The best initial step for the researcher would be, well, I'm going to have to look at Chinese trade with these other countries. That would be where I would start, because I'm looking at China's impact on other nations. The correct answer in this case is going to be search for articles on trade in Eastern Asia. How do you like that? Since we're looking at Chinese trade here. Okay. Again, some of these questions are hard. Some of these questions are technical. But if you take time, you will figure out enough of them so that you will get a passing score. No one will ever ask you what your score is. All they will ask you is, did you pass? Now, I'd like to talk about the essay for a few minutes. The essay is one of those strange things. They're going to give us a scenario, and in this case, the scenario is we're going to be planning instruction for 11th grade U.S. History and Government class, and the unit we are planning for will focus on key themes and standards in New York State. Now, they actually give us the key ideas, they give us the key themes. We don't have to remember them. They're there in front of us. That takes a lot of pressure off. Now we're going to be looking at expansion, nationalism, and sectionalism, 1800 to 1865. Now, that's going to be manifest destiny in the Midwest. Okay. But this is the tricky part. You're preparing to teach a lesson using two primary sources. In this case, one is text and one is a picture, a painting. Write a response of approximately 400, 600 words. First of all, you're not writing 400 words, you're writing 600 words. So if you write 400 words, you lose 1/3 of your credit. I want all my credit. I want all my points. I want all my minutes. I'm writing 600 words. But don't write 600 words. Write your essay, and then you either edit up to 600 or you edit down to 600. For example, if I'm writing about President James Polk, and short words, I write President James Polk. But if I have too many words, I just write Polk. P-O-L-K. I'm going to open it up, close it down, depending on how many words. But this is the tricky part. They're going to give us 6 bullet points. This is not really an essay I'm writing. I have to address all 6 bullet points. I need to treat each bullet point like it was a separate question and answer it completely. Bullet point 1, identify a specific learning goal for the lesson. I go back to the standards. I go back to the framework, and I'm going to identify a specific learning goal. Describe how you will assess student readiness for the lesson's learning goal. That's the pre-assessment. Could be based on what I did in previous lessons. Could be based on what I do now. But I'm going to have to pre-assess. I'm going to have to explain how I'm going to pre-assess. Third bullet point, describe an instructional strategy. Fourth bullet point, identify a potential challenge. Fifth bullet point, describe a modification you would use to meet the needs of all learners. And sixth bullet point, describe a performance task you will use as your formative assessment. Okay. I have to touch on each point. My specific learning goal is going to be to understand the impact of expansion west on the new nation. I'm going to assess student readiness for the learning. Maybe I'm going to ask them a couple of questions I might do now on the image to see if they have the skills to acquire the information from the image. Maybe because we've done images before, or maybe even just give them a map of the United States to look at. My instructional strategy, someone said earlier they're going to do popcorn reading. My instructional could be close reading of text. I could use some of the Common Core aligned reading approaches. My instructional strategy may be to use multiple entry points where we compare the text with a video or a map, but I have to have a clear instructional strategy. Part of my instructional strategy, since it's complex reading, will be place students in teams to analyze the text together. A potential challenge in delivering this instruction, in this case, it's very complex text. So one of the things I might do is to break the passages down. I may give them a vocabulary box. I may pre-review the text first. I may give them guiding questions. I may give them the guiding questions and review them before I give them the text, because that's going to be a problem for them. What modification might I use for learners? Again, I might have students working in teams. I might edit the material, so I have differentiated text, so that some students are reading more sophisticated vocabulary and some students are not. I may have reading buddies, so that students are assisting each other. I might even work with some of my target students individually while the class is working in teams. And describe a performance task you will use. I like to use an exit ticket, where students are asked to answer the AIM question based on the material they have studied and support it with evidence from the text. But the key to success on this essay, it's not a holistic essay. It's not great writing. Did you answer the 6 bullet points? When you finish your essay, you now go back and you look at the multiple choice questions. You go over the ones you weren't sure of, and then if there's time left, you edit your essay. They always say English and spelling don't count, but it has to be written in standard English. What I always say is if it has to be written in standard English, then grammar and spelling count. You don't want flags. You don't want someone looking at it saying, this person doesn't write that well. So you want to go back and you'll ask a couple of minutes after you finish reviewing all the multiple choice, is to give it one more edit. If you follow these simple instructions, I know everyone will do well on the Social Studies CST. I want to thank you.